IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. My name is Malathi, Renati, and I head the policy school. And I have with me Mubeena Mubarak, who's actually completed her postgraduate program in public policy at the Takshashila Institution last year, and she's now helping manage the program. She'll be with me to talk about solid waste management. It's an area that she has researched on recently, and she will be talking about it more with respect to Coimbatore, which is the city she lives in. And she apparently also has interned at the Coimbatore Municipal Corporation back in 2021. So an excellent person for us to get insights on. So welcome, Mubeena.
Hi, Malathi.
All right. So we'll first get into just for the viewers who don't know where Coimbatore is. Coimbatore is a very popular tier 2 city. So it's nestled, close to the border of Kerala, around 90 kilometers south of Ooty, which is another very popular summer resort for many in not just in Tamil Nadu, but also the adjacent states. And it's also one of the biggest industrial and educational hubs. So the city is quite popular. It has excellent weather year round. And interesting trivia that I learned this morning is that it's often referred to as the Manchester of South India due to its cotton production and textile industries. So, and it's a lovely place that many people tell me. And, it's a nice place for us to kind of understand how the solid waste management is being done, because it's one of the top tier 2 cities in India. From a city perspective and from a municipal level management perspective. Okay, so Mubeena, if you can just let's just start by kind of letting our listeners know what is solid waste management, right? So you can just explain a bit about what it is before we get into how the government is managing it in Coimbatore.
Okay, so solid waste management refers to the complete process in which the waste from households, bulk waste generators like restaurants, hospitals, everything is collected. It is then treated. Then after the treatment is done, this solid waste is disposed of in different forms. The most common form till now has been landfills. But since the climate change has a lot in future, so it's more like we aim into how can we reduce the waste that is being disposed of in the landfills, more of a climate hazard perspective. So right. Yeah, so, and Coimbatore is a city which almost produces about 500 tons metric tons of waste per day. And the waste which is collected from different households gets segregated into biodegradable and recyclable wastes. These biodegradable wastes is sent to micro-composting centers in the city, which in a decentralized manner converts all the biodegradable waste into briquettes in the form of cylindrical compressed form, which can be used as fuel for the factories.
Okay.
And the remaining recyclable waste is sent to the treatment plant at Velalur, where it gets treated. The refuse is changed based on categories. About 156 categories of separation happens. And after which the last waste, the complete refuse gets deposited into landfill.
Okay. So what percentage of the waste from the source to the landfill, right? What percentage of it ends up in the landfill?
So about collection rate at Coimbatore is 80%. So 80% of the waste is collected, of which only 20% is treated.
Okay.
Okay. So the remaining waste completely goes into the landfill. And it is more prevalent that in one day, about 420 tons per day of waste goes into landfill untreated, because there are very many factors because of which it can't be treated, because sometimes the wet waste and dry waste get mixed up and the quality of the waste reduces. For example, waste has a high calorific value, and it serves as a best fuel for factories. They can use it to generate electricity. But once this wet waste and dry waste mix up, then the calorific value reduces, and we don't have an option other than depositing it in the landfills.
Right. And of course, we know, right, improper disposal of municipal solid waste can create unsanitary conditions. And these conditions in turn can lead to the pollution of the environment and obviously outbreaks of vector-borne diseases that it can kind of spread by rodents and insects and other things. So I think the importance of the three pillars that we always kind of speak about, right? The Samaj, that's the society, the Sarkar, which is the government, and the Bazaar, the marketplace, is very important here, because all three have to work in unison to kind of ensure that we have this task of solid waste management, which has very complex technical challenges. It can be overcome when all these three come together, right? So if you can just maybe highlight some of the common challenges faced in tier 2 cities.
Okay, so almost all of the tier 2 cities are right now undergoing rapid urbanization, and there's a population blast.
Right.
So because of which all the cities are crippled with inadequate waste disposal practices, especially for municipal solid waste. There are difficulties in segregating dry waste and wet waste. This gives rise to unsanitary environments like pollution, and we don't have inefficient resource utilization that can happen once this condition takes place. And disease vectors are rapidly increasing. So majorly people who are living around the landfills in almost all of the cities have respiratory problems. They have stomach upsets happening frequently, which is almost 20 to 25% higher when compared to people who are not exposed to the or in the vicinity of a landfill.
Right. We know that the stench from it, and then of course the water is contaminated, right? So the long-term impacts, like you mentioned, that one would occur when the groundwater is polluted, right?
Yes. For example, in my vicinity, I'm particularly interested in this because I just live 7 kilometers away from the landfill here in Coimbatore. So the surrounding vicinity has a very pungent smell, especially in the evenings. And when I had visited it as a part of my internship at the Coimbatore Corporation, where I had seen huge houseflies. They don't look like houseflies; they look like giant flies, I should say.
Okay.
They are so huge, and people there have very bad conditions of life. For example, their water has completely changed yellow. They have a lot of fluoride poisoning happening. They have to frequently visit the doctor for no reason at all. And recently there was a news where a person had gone, a rag picker, if I'm not wrong, had gone there, and the landfill got fire. No one could save him. It was you never know when it bursts into flames. So that is one of the biggest problems and challenges faced.
Also, could this, I mean, of course, specific to Coimbatore and cities where the industrial and the industrial hubs, and typically tier 2 cities are such, right? So could it also be the pollution from the textile industries and other manufacturing sector, right? That could be thriving in that area otherwise, right? The pollution, that's contributed.
Yes, pollution.
Also, correct?
Yeah, pollution is, not to let alone that air pollution is predominant here. Not though as the rate of Delhi, but it's still comparatively more than the when you compare the air quality of index of the surrounding areas. Mostly the air is containing particulate matter of 10 mm, which itself is, I don't think it's easy for someone to wear masks to protect themselves. And 24 hours we can't wear masks. So pollution, yes, it is a predominant factor.
Okay. And what has the government done at this point in time? If you look at the local, with Coimbatore Municipal Corporation, what have they done in mandating it, and what are the challenges in the existing practices? Currently, what is mandated essentially?
Right. So as per the Swachh Bharat mission of Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0, the source segregation is given importance to. Now, the corporation has mandated that every waste that is being generated, even in households, has to be segregated based on dry and wet waste.
Okay.
So, based on that, I would just want to elaborate on the hierarchy of municipal solid waste management. So, first, the waste is segregated from the source. It is then divided into three categories mainly. One is the wet waste category, which includes, biodegradable waste from kitchens, markets, like vegetables, fruits, meats, etc.
Organic waste,
Then,
yes.
yeah, dry waste, which includes non-biodegradable like plastics, paper, glass. And there is another category of waste segregation known as construction and demolition waste. This is more of bricks, steel, demolition. Whenever a building is demolished, the refuse that comes out of it. Those are the three main categories. As per the mandate of the corporation or the city municipality, it is more of these wastes. The wet waste has to first be used as a animal feed or fertilizer. It can then in stage 2 can be can undergo composting through aerobic or vermin composting facilities.
Okay.
And the last and the final option is landfilling. Similarly, the dry waste which is generated has to be reused by people. For example, it can be we ourselves, if we have glass bottles, we can reuse them, or the recyclers can recycle the bottles, carry bags, containers, etc. Then the non recyclable portion can be used for energy recovery. Final option only is landfilling. The construction and demolition waste similarly can be reused. For example, they can be recycled and used as paver tiles, or they can be used to lay roads. And finally, only it has to go to the landfill. So this is the important mandate, and only very very less process or less fractions of waste has to end up into landfill. Currently, Coimbatore Corporation has a sanitary landfill in place where all the refuse, after 3 to 4 times of recycling and absorbing all the energy that it can generate, finally only it can be sent into a sanitary landfill. Now, what is a sanitary landfill? Sanitary landfill is nothing but a large area of land which is covered with impermeable plastic layer, after which the waste that is recycled is dropped into it, and it is compressed by bulldozers, etc. Once this is compressed, there are adjacent pipes which connect the entire area of the landfill, through which the leachate, which is the waste when decomposes, it gives out a solution. The leachate is collected in separate tanks. This tank will then be used to absorb methane, which is then used for energy recovery. After the waste has been consolidated in the sanitary landfill, once the landfill reaches its maximum capacity, it is covered again with an impermeable layer, and it is used as children playground, etc. That is the mechanism at present in use in Coimbatore.
Okay. How about for bio CNGs? As in, are there plans for that?
We do have plans, but it is not maximum utilized to the maximum level. For example, we do have micro composting centers where I mentioned that biodegradable waste is converted into briquettes. There, even the leachate is collected. We have energy generation. That biomethane is being supplied to nearby houses in the vicinity, where they use it for cooking and electricity.
Okay.
But again, we still have a lot more recovery that can be done from that.
Okay. So what? And I guess that brings me to my next question in terms of the second part of the question, rather. What were the challenges in the existing practices that are followed? Would you want to just kind of elaborate on a few more, the key challenges?
So challenges, especially in Coimbatore, is that we have enormous amount of waste that is generated. So we have a set of timings within only after 6 p.m. in the evening, the waste collecting trucks or lorries can move within the city limits because of congestion. And because of that, the waste that is generated in one day is not being transported in that one day itself. For example, any waste, be it biodegradable waste, it has a tendency of breaking down within one day. Second day it
Mhm.
starts emitting smell, and the third day it starts decaying with worms.
Right.
So this 3-day process is too much for the city's a waste management plant to cover. Because this one day's 500 tons per day, for example, cannot be all time collected all at once, some because of which the transportation problems are there. Then the waste gets piled up in the streets, and stray animals start feed on it, and again mosquito population increases, and we have fever, etc. That's usual. And this is the at a phase where the waste management plant itself has not reached its maximum capacity. Of the 500 tons of waste that is generated in the city, only 20 percentage of it is recycled. So
Mhm.
remaining everything goes as legacy waste. Legacy waste are huge dumps of waste that is dropped in the landfill separately. They can no longer be processed, they just lie there. So that's how
Okay.
it happens. So 20 percentage of 500 tons is very very minuscule compared to the amount of waste that is generated in the city.
Okay. And the city has not as yet thought about segregation with respect to e-waste as such. Has that been thought of? Because I think the initial, it's always we need to sort of take those baby steps, right? Even for a city to kind of grow, for a city to kind of grow in with respect to how it manages its waste. The behavioral the changes have to be done at the society level also, because so the segregation has to happen at source. And I'm looking forward to the next section where you're going to be talking about different cities which have successfully done this, right? So that we can we can easily replicate their model. But in Coimbatore, is there how's the e-waste currently being handled?
So e-waste at Coimbatore is very nascent,
Mm.
especially with the use of electronics and electrical equipments having a explosion
Yeah.
here. So even the UN termed it as a phenomenon of tsunami of e-waste. So at present, Coimbatore, this is very nascent, but we have Jamshedpur, which is in Jharkhand, which is a city which had this problem before in 2018. So at 2000, in before 2018, hundreds of local kabadiwalas and recyclers in Jamshedpur, what they usually used to do is they used to collect the e-waste and they used to burn it
Okay.
just to recover the metals from it. But
Mm.
it had exposed themselves and also the environment into toxic fumes and chemicals.
Hmm.
After such an issue was raised because of health conditions, the city embarked into engaging a company as a producer responsibility organization. This was given the opportunity to work on e-wastes. Now,
Okay.
currently, they are very efficient in e-waste collection, and about 230 tons of e-waste which is collected so far, 95 ton has been recycled. They've
Okay.
yeah, that is one of the commendable uh, stage that they've reached right now. And the cost of collection, transportation, and channelizing is entirely borne by a hired agency. So
Hmm.
there's no financial burden on the city government.
Okay. So they have successfully been able to
Yes.
handle this. Okay. Any other cities with respect to e-waste management who have, you know?
At present, there are different cities which have excelled in not in e-waste management, but in different areas of solid waste management. To start with, they've taken sections of the waste management. For example, some have focused only on source segregation. Some have just focused on managing the biodegradable waste and the like.
Okay, so maybe we can start looking at some of these cities, how they've excelled in their own capacity in those various areas. Maybe we can start with the source segregation, shall we?
Yeah, sure. So source segregation, I would the three cities which had aced, I would say, is Indore, Alapi in Kerala, and Panaji, Goa. So they had reduced the operational cost of dealing with waste. So what happened is that they created awareness campaigns, which was basically run by the government itself to promote source segregation. And this not only created a very remarkable change, it changed the attitude of the people themselves because they held themselves responsible for the waste that they generate. So it was more of they followed a robust monitoring system and had enforced a series of bylaws. So once segregation was achieved, these cities then undertook a study about the population and the amount of waste generated in each ward, and they had a route plan for that particular ward. So the vehicle and staff demand had was comparatively the same based on the population of that particular ward. So
Okay.
through segregation and participation of all stakeholders, I think Indore especially has become a champion in waste management sector in India itself because of the efforts of the citizen and the government here.
Yeah, and I think, of course, they are hailed as the cleanest city of India for the last 5 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken, right? So,
Yes.
I think this is a classic example where the society plays such a big role, because we are the ones consuming all this, the different sources, right? Of eventually that we that gets as waste over time, and we need to kind of do that in a very we have to be conscious about what we consume also. And so maybe later on in this episode we'll also talk about as a society what we can do to make a difference. But I think Indore has kind of done it well. They've, like you mentioned, right, they've motivated the citizens to sort of embrace that segregation, and people are now doing it consciously. And I think the other interesting bit which I read about Indore was that they have the 6 bin source segregation apparently. So it's not just the 2 bins that we have here in 2 or 3 bins that we typically have, right? But they have 6, which is like apart from your wet waste, dry waste, and the plastic, they also have e-waste. They have the domestic sanitary waste as well as the domestic hazardous waste. So at source, it's kind of being segregated both at the households and the commercial establishments. And then this is kind of helping the municipals in turn to kind of to ensure that the segregated wastes are then disposed of in a meaningful way and with less impact to the environment overall, right? So that's an interesting thing how they've gone about with it. Any other cities you'd like to mention for source segregation?
Source segregation, I think these are the 3 cities that have done a commendable job in waste segregation at the
Okay.
source.
All right.
So waste can be segregated at different stages as well, but the effect of it will reduce once it is not segregated at the source. As I said, the calorific value of the waste will reduce.
Okay. How about with respect to the biodegradable waste management? Could you think of some cities which have excelled there?
Yeah, so we have 3 cities here as well. One is Mysuru in Karnataka, Bobili in Andhra Pradesh, and Bengurla in Maharashtra. So these cities had come up with zero waste management plans. So
Okay.
they had created micro composting centers. They followed vermicomposting and biomethanization process, especially for kitchen waste and organic waste. So all this processes will convert fish or meat or fibrous wastes into briquettes of biomass, and they use this fertilizers for the nurseries, etc., nearby. So this particular mechanism can be incorporated in any of an urban city, irrespective of what is the size of a population. These cities had a centralized processing unit and a decentralized processing unit. So the centralized processing unit is where processes like windrowing, where huge piles of wastes are laid on a land and they're let to dry.
Okay.
So that process of windrowing, vermicomposting, and biogas production happens. And in the decentralized processes, home composting is done. So almost every home in that town has a home composting center where the vegetable waste is compost.
Okay.
So based on the population size, if one ward itself has 200 houses and that 200 house compost their own wastes, they generate resource, they create their own mud, which is a very enriching feeling. So that is commendable about these 3 cities.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. How about for construction and demolition, the waste management here? Because this is a little tricky, especially construction. And nowadays, we see a lot of demolition happening in cities where we've run short of land and existing structures have to be raised down before they build new ones, right? So the waste there is a combination of, they could be metal, the steel, there could be ceramic involved, and then apart from the cement and other things. So how would the waste management of such things, and if you know of cities which have done well there, if you would like to talk about that.
Yes. So one of the biggest impact was created by North Delhi. What happened? The North Delhi region used to generate 2,000 tons per day of waste. Waste is always spoken in tons per day. That's why I keep mentioning TPD, tons per day. And this, especially in North Delhi, there was illegal dumping of construction and demolition wastes. It resulted in choking of the water drains, and it started polluting the Yamuna River. This was the biggest issue, and they took an initiative. They created a processing plant with a capacity of 2,000 tons per day, exactly the amount of waste that they were generating. It was established in Burari almost in 2009. And the plant currently scientifically processes 2,000 tons per day, with construction demolition waste being a major component of it. So what they do, they convert these wastes into aggregates, which in turn is converted into RMC, or ready mix concrete. They are converted into cement blocks. They are converted into hollow bricks and pavement blocks. They also convert into manufactured sand, or popularly known as M sand. This not only reduced the consumption of, they not only reduced the waste from choking the rivers, but they had reduced the consumption of virgin construction raw material. You don't have to generate cement or sand from the initial step. Rather, you can use the processed way. So this also had a very greater impact. It reduced environmental hazard in that particular region as well.
Okay, and that's ironic because, as you know, Delhi is currently, in fact, also going through quite a bad phase with respect to the pollution levels. Right?
True.
Okay,
I'm glad that they took this initiative to make at least that much of change that they could do.
Yeah, I think that's at least a small step, right? The large scheme of things. All right, we'll take a quick break now, and then maybe after the break, we'll just look at more cities, because I think the examples that we've been going through city-wise kind of gives us hope as well that others have done it successfully, and that different cities could implement a similar model. Okay, so we'll be back after a short break.
Stay tuned to All Things Policy. We'll be right back after a short commercial break.
Hi everyone, and welcome back from the break. So I was discussing with Mubeena Mubarak about the solid waste management. So before the break, we were looking at some of the challenges faced in Tier 2 cities, and what were the mandates that are there in Coimbatore specifically, because she's also kind of worked on certain aspects within that city. But later on, we went into what other cities in India have done to overcome some of the challenges that they faced. Okay, so we spoke about source segregation, how some cities have been successful there. Biodegradable waste management was another. Construction and demolition waste management was the third. And now we'll head into looking at a few more areas and how some cities have been successful before we kind of talk about the policy gaps and end it with what we could do from the Samaj Sarkar Bazaar perspective in overcoming this. All right, so let's get into the next, which is the sanitary waste management. So Mubeena, if you can tell us about which cities have excelled in managing this.
So sanitary waste has been one of the least explored parts of solid waste management. It's also debated of all the streams of solid waste. Because it can be generated at the household level itself. It's not just only bulk generators will create sanitary waste. So as per the solid waste management rules of 2016, this sanitary waste has to be handed over along with the dry waste. And it has to be having a separate cover with which it is labeled. For example, if we have a sanitary waste, we can have a red color cover for that. So that it gives a hint to the waste collector saying that this is a sanitary waste. It has to be handled with care, and the handling and channelizing of this stream of waste involves occupational hazards, and it's biggest concern for most cities. For example, the cities that have excelled in this case are Pune and Karad in Maharashtra. What they did is that they ensured that sanitary waste is transported and processed separately. It was in a local common biomedical waste treatment facility known as CBWTF. So they aced because of higher accountability among citizens. As I said, just by not disposing the waste without any a separate covering or a identifiable color, if the citizens who generate it had created a separate hint for the collector, which these citizens in these cities had done, then that was the reason for the Pune to excel. For example, Pune city administration had a red dot campaign in which they started exploring the state of art technology to make value added products from the sanitary waste. They're still in a initial stage at this, but they thought of how to convert the sanitary waste into value added products. So this was a very innovative approach, I would say. No one would have
Okay.
thought of making waste into wealth.
Hmm. But there's one challenging aspect that I should mention here, right? When we say segregating at source, those citizens who are doing it very diligently, segregating everything, putting it out there, and we have faced this problem in Bangalore, where I live, and the waste segregation is even. I mean, the segregation, even if it's done at source, so segregating everything from your dry, wet, sanitary, everything, right? It's all mixed up by the people collecting the waste, and that's kind of poses a problem because when you see them just mixing it up as they're collecting it, then the motivation to say, hey, but I'm segregating it, but then you're going to anyway eventually going to mix it up all over again, right? So what's the point? So I think even at each stage we need to ensure that when it's segregated, it's kept segregated, and there's proper mechanisms even for those collecting the waste. Like currently there are people who are just pushing. There's a push cart and it has a few maybe barrels. And this is I'm talking about in my local community. Or sometimes they even don't have that. They just have a long kind of a plastic sheet into which they might put things and then just drag it along. So even for the those who are collecting the waste, it's not very scientifically done, or it's not easy for them to kind of be able to do their day to day, to play that role. And I think that could be one of the reasons why there's even the segregation, even though it might be happening at source, is kind of mixed up just right at the next stage, right outside the household. So that poses quite a challenge, actually.
Yeah. So on that note, I just wanted to add that at present in my vicinity, what they do, the collectors, the people who come with the push carts to collect the waste from our doorstep, they identify the households which mix wastes. So
Okay.
what they do is they stop collecting waste from that
You're
particular house.
blacklisted then.
Actually, so you
Okay.
deal with your waste because we don't have the need to separate your waste. Is a signal that they give to that house. But
Hmm.
there are other unintended consequences of this, that they'll start dumping the waste nearby. But
Hmm.
I think even the pushcart people at present are being instructed by the corporation, and there are frequent inspections that they have to be a part of. And suddenly, an inspector comes and checks their cart to see if it is all segregated and stuff.
Right.
So that is, I
Yeah, I
think,
think the checks
again,
and
it takes a
balances.
step.
Yeah, I agree. I think the checks and balances at every stage has to be employed. But then it's best if as citizens we embrace that segregation and we know why we're doing it, and then we can start to then educate those around us about the benefits of it. All right, so that's interesting. So that's about the sanitary waste management. How about for the zero landfill city model approach?
Okay, so first of all, I'll explain what is a zero landfill city model. It
Right.
is basically based on resource recovery, basically on the principles of circular economy. So it advocates for the need for continuous efforts to phase out the dependency of landfills on the whole for waste disposal.
Right.
So this zero landfill model, as the name says, ensures that maximum quantities of waste is subjected to scientific treatment and recycling. Okay, so that we minimize the need to construct new landfills, especially because all the cities are having land crunch. We can't
Right.
go in search of land just for dumping our wastes. We don't find land for more productive uses as itself. So
Also,
for
the
dumping,
hazards for those living in that area, right? The community living around these landfills. It's unfair
yes,
for them if they just.
exactly. Now we can even bring in the human rights people saying that we are entitled to get quality air for us, but the people at this vicinity are not left with a choice. They don't have a
Yeah.
choice. They have to live there. So, zero landfill model, there are cities such as Ambikapur in Chhattisgarh, Chandrapur in Maharashtra, and Taliparamba in Kerala who have adopted this model. For example, Ambikapur, they had brought in the local administration and women self help groups who had been inspired by the concept of garbage clinic model. So the
Okay.
waste is brought to the solid clinic liquid resource management SLRM center. They have unique names where the recyclables are first extracted into 20 inorganic fractions by secondary segregation. This is then followed by tertiary segregation, where 156 other categories it's split into. The waste gets split into another 156 categories. So the legacy waste dump site is cleared in Ambikapur alone by the urban local bodies, and now it is being used as a waste recycling center. They no longer dump waste in the landfill there because of all the waste that goes inside it. It is extracted into different sectors, different categories, and maximum utilization happens there. In the case of Chandrapur, they've sensitized all the stakeholders through, IEC mechanism in information, education, and communication. They've done various awareness campaigns,
Okay.
and parallelly, the existing dump sites, which contains about 68,000 cubic meters of legacy waste, is remediated using biomining. So, what is biomining? It is a scientific process of excavation, treatment, segregating, and utilizing the aged municipal solid waste lying in dump sites to
Okay.
get
Okay.
what can be maximum recovered from that. And the land in Chandrapur also has been recovered, and now they use a sanitary landfill for the for the dumping. In the case of Kerala, Taliparamba, it has adopted a decentralized system after 2012, especially with the help of women self-help groups, and about 85% of the households adhere to door-to-door collection process, and almost 99% of the waste is processed by scientific methods. And it is now the current dump site in the city has now been converted into the town's material recovery facility.
Okay.
The name itself signifies what the dump site is being used for.
Right. Apparently, even in Indore, I think there were many acres of land that was sort of reclaimed in that sense, which were former landfills, and that's now thriving. So I think there's a lot one can do to reverse, the trend as well. Okay, so what we can do is we can just take a look at how the markets can kind of help, and I think the next two we can sort of club that the technology and the innovation that's involved. So the innovative models that have been followed, and the technology that's involved, because this is where I think the markets can benefit, knowing that in fact the global waste management market size has been valued to be more than $1,600 billion in 2020, and it's expected to grow to more than 2.5 billion by 2030. So that's such a huge growth that we're expecting, and we know that unless we do something, this is going to be a problem that we're going to see not just in cities but also in the tier, like not just in the main cities, tier ones, but the tier two and the tier three as well. Right. So the markets can then will essentially can be responsible and get involved in the management from the collection to the transportation, and eventually the disposable of garbage, sewage, and other waste products. So I think this the next part you can just touch upon, right? How technology, innovation, the different models that were employed, and the cities that followed that.
Sure. As you mentioned, the global market for waste generation has really boomed and is to boom in future as well. So in India, there are like three cities mainly: Kakinada in Andhra Pradesh, Leh in Ladakh, and Bangalore. Everyone knows it's in Karnataka.
Okay.
So these three cities have excelled in it. So Kakinada had come up with a information communication and technology solutions such as RFID. They started using RFID based technology to uh, understand the efficiency of the collection system with the help of GPS technology. They used to track the vehicles which collect the wastes. And similarly, with the case of Leh, where they, with the help of Ladakh Autonomous Hill Development Council, they installed a 30 ton per day capacity solar power based plant for
Okay.
solid waste management. So, RFID tag was also used in Bangalore to they also used geotagging to identify the collection routes and monitor the waste management services. Now, monitoring the waste management services is the trickiest part of it. We do not know
Right.
where it is a problem. Is it in the primary collection center, or is it the secondary collection center where it is a problem, or
Hmm.
what happens during transportation? So that was something that was overcome in this idea. So Bangalore had created a mobile based application called Easy Tap, and they didn't design to monitor garbage vulnerable points. They started imposing the penalties on offenders. So that was one thing that helped them monitor the waste management related activities. So in other countries, there are, for example, in US, what happens is that whenever a particular landfill or a site or a waste management facility has been taken over by a private firm, that's where market come into play. These private firm, how do they earn? They earn through tipping fee. It is known as tipping fee, where
Hmm.
every truck or lorry which brings in the waste from different parts of the region dumps at the landfill only after paying the tipping fee. For example, the tipping fee has gone in certain regions to a rate of being $85. It has gone to that stage and even more. It's increasing right now. So every truck has to pay that tipping fee to the waste management agency, and the waste management agency can use scientific methods. It can use incineration. They can set up solar based treatment facility through which they convert this waste, and it goes into it becomes a resource. What happens, for example, in Singapore, the waste that is generated is incinerated. Then the fumes that are used to create, they are cleaned and then let out into the air. Whereas the
Hmm.
heat from this incineration is used for energy generation, and the final refuse of all the ashes in the form of ashes is deposited in a particular um, waste, you know, a pond sort of infrastructure, which
Okay.
does not mix it with the other wastewater. So the private agencies, usually even in Coimbatore, there is a private agency which manages the waste processing here. They come up with quotations, and the one which gives the best offer to the government gets the deal. After which, how much they make out of it is their incentive. They have the incentive to make more money out of it so that they can run the facility, and by reducing the dumping on the landfill.
Okay. Yeah, I think eventually we need to look at win-win situations, because this is something that's I mean, this kind of a problem, right? It's a crisis that needs urgent attention, all over, not just all over India, but worldwide as well, right? So I think we need to look at win-win situations. So maybe what we can do is we just touch upon the last one, and then after which we will head into just to wrap up the what the society can do, and then some things that the markets and the governments could do in terms of what gaps are there and how they can fill that. Okay, so the last one I think you mentioned was the pay as you throw model. So if you can just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So pay as you throw at present in India is something that has not been brought into use because of many reasons, but I don't want to go into that. But pay as you throw, what does it mean is that it is a fee based on per capita generation of waste, which means that if less waste is generated, only lesser fee will be levied. Now,
Okay.
households, non residential premises, bulk waste generators like apartments, commercial establishments, restaurants, daily markets, hospitals, they have to pay a waste management service fee that is
Right.
similar to their water bills and electricity bills. Now, what pay as you throw does is it makes people responsible for what waste they create, and it reduces the load of waste ending up in the landfill. Now, people will start looking at waste as a resource, and they'll be mindful of how much waste they generate. There has been studies uh, which says that the amount of waste generated in a city is directly proportional to the household's economic situation. For
Mhm.
example, high income households tend to generate more waste compared to the lower income households.
Right.
We look, for example, we look at the bottle's rate, it's 20 rupees. We say that, okay, why should we reuse this bottle? We throw it, it's just 20, we can get another one. That's a
Right.
basic example of the mindset of a person from a higher income um, society. So pay as you throw has been in use in different countries like Netherlands, Germany, UK, and Japan. In India, it's still in a very nascent stage, but as per the data, it says that, for example, if there is 420 tons per day that is being generated and goes and ends up into a landfill after being processed, this pay as you throw mechanism can alone reduce the amount of waste from 420 tons per day to 84 tons per day, which is very, very drastic. And if per day 84 tons per day only reaches the landfill after maximum recovery, it means that we don't have to look for alternative resources for land. We comparatively reduce the burden of illnesses or the negative externalities from the landfill on the people in the nearby areas.
Right. Isn't it quite unfortunate, right, Mubeena? In India, many of the practices we used to have, right, the old practices that we used to have were very environment friendly and very sustainable. Just take a simple thing like, people used to eat on a banana leaf.
Hmm.
So once you're done with the meal, once you throw the leaf, and I'm talking about just in functions and stuff, right? You throw the leaf. That's organic. It's biodegradable, and I mean, there's nothing left of it, after a while. Whereas now with the disposable plates, disposable cups, and cutlery and everything, right, that's come with it. With the economic growth, yes, we've all these other practices have come in, and now we're looking. When we look back and you realize, practices we used to follow even just a few, 3 or 4 decades ago, were much more sustainable, and even people used to kind of follow them, even carrying your own cloth bag when you go to the bazaar or to the groceries, right? And so there's less of plastic, use of plastic. Now the usage of plastic and dependence on it has also grown, right? So as society, as the consumers, as part of the triple, when you look at the golden triangle, right, of the Samaj Sakar Bazaar, and we realize that we as the society are the largest in that, right, and we play the biggest role. I think it's important for us as society to really rethink of how we manage not just our waste, but also rethink on terms of being more conscious of how we consume. So which means our consumption habits have to change, our that we sort of reduce and borrow where we can. In the past, we used to have hand me downs, whether it's clothes and other things too, right? That used to go through the family from your cousins and other things, and we used to, it was we used to wear it with such. I mean, we used to be so happy that we are actually wearing our big brothers or big sisters clothing.
Exactly.
But nowadays, it's more of, okay, I mean, I'm going to only purchase new stuff, kind of a thing, right? So it's looked down upon. So I think we need to be more conscious about how we consume. I think it starts from there. We obviously have to refuse, if we don't want something, we say no, we don't want this product, we won't be requiring it or using it. The good thing is that now in delivery, if you look at some of these like Zomato and others, right, they have an option where it says, do you want cutlery or not, and you can you can opt for no cutlery. So that's sort of a small step. So I think refusing, even when you go to a store and they kind of give you extra ketchup or sachet of extra stuff, you can just say no, I don't want it, because you know that there's an extra plastic that you're consuming. And of course, the 3 R's in terms of the reducing, the reusing, the recycling, and of course, we have now things like, why don't you re-gift, or you can pass on
Hmm.
something, or repair stuff. Don't kind of just use and throw. Think of how you can increase the longevity of a product, right? So I think as consumers, as the society rather, we should kind of be aware of this and be conscious about it in our day-to-day actions as well. So maybe that's on the society side. So on the bazaar, that's the markets as well as the governments. If you could just sum it up as to what they can do and to play a bigger role in kind of making sure that waste management is kind of done in a more scientific way.
So, as you mentioned, society has a very big role to play in waste management, but doing it in silos doesn't work. So that is where the government or the sarkar comes in, where it spearheads the process, where it creates collectives or groups of people or community, and it spearheads the process of creating awareness. It brings in the market players and hands over certain sections of waste processing to them. It There are even situations where, or examples where we had green champions. Okay, so these are people who are similar to friends of police, who are given the responsibility of their locality. See, so the government plays a role by saying, giving a credible, being a credible touch point for them, connecting the samaj and the bazaar. So even the waste processing units or the private firms, since they have a lot to earn from waste management, they have the incentive to reduce the burden of landfills. So if they reduce the burden on landfill, they tend to get more orders, which itself is a maximizing incentive for them. So I think these are the ways in which the government and bazaar can contribute.
All right, wonderful, Mubeena. I think it was. I enjoyed the last 15 minutes of our talk. There's so much that we can do, and I think until we until we are aware of where the areas are that we can contribute, right? We'll always think this is somebody else's problem. Okay, and literally kind of kick the can down the road, so to speak. So I think thank you for that. I think it was a wonderful overview of what solid waste management is and what are the measures one could take.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Malathi. It was a great experience and enriched me as well.
Thanks, Mubeena.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.